couple of weeks ago, I was going to create a video talking about some of the pros and cons of physical versus digital games. I had prepared a script and was about ready to record it, but I lacked time to really get the video out, and I just wasn't feeling how the script turned out. In between then and now, I had heard about how the Stop Killing Games movement had reached the threshold for its petition in the EU. Stop Killing Games is a movement looking to preserve video games, particularly online multiplayer games, when servers close. Since I had already been thinking about this topic a good amount, I thought maybe with a little different framing, it may still be worth making a video out of. Stop Killing Games started in reaction to Ubisoft's closure of the servers for The Crew. Due to the only online nature of The Crew, when the server shut down, even the single-player portions of the game became inaccessible to players who bought the game. From my understanding, Ubisoft also did this with very short notice. It was delisted suddenly in December 2023 and announced at the same time that the servers would be taken off at the end of March 2024. Needless to say, this didn't go over very well. One man, Ross Scott, used this to found Stop Killing Games. His idea is for games with online components to be forced to find ways to allow offline play or private servers. This way, players can still have access to the games even if the official servers close. He holds to the idea that people purchase games as a good, not just as a service. This movement seems to have attracted mixed opinions, which has led to YouTube drama that I'm not too interested in delving into. What I am interested in is thinking through the goals of this movement and whether I agree with them or not. Which in principle, I find it very hard not to agree with the general goal of the movement. As gaming moves away from physical media and more towards a digital-only reality, there seems to be some pretty bad practices that have entered into the picture. I think that taking a look at these practices and finding ways to protect consumers and the games themselves are good ideas. Online-only requirements for games that have single-player campaigns are a very bad practice in my mind. There is really no reason for this other than control over the game and forcing people maybe to move on from the game in question at a certain point, most likely to a sequel or some other game from the company. Ultimately, it feels more like a mechanism of control than anything that is really needed to help the game function. I'm sure it's also part of the ongoing quest against piracy, but that doesn't make me very sympathetic to the usage of always online games when it comes to single player elements. It feels like punishing the people who have legitimately bought your game just as much, if not more, than the people who are trying to pirate the game and can probably find some workaround or crack that would eliminate the need for it anyway. While I also support this for online-only games, I do understand how it might not always work out the best. I think that there are games that could easily find ways to have private servers or other elements to allow for life after the main servers went down. Games like Counter-Strike have had the ability for private servers since, I think, the very beginning, and still have it as an option in the most recent release. I'm pretty sure other companies could do this too if they really wanted to. Again, the absence of these things feels like a way to control the life of a game and more about supposedly benefiting the company with little care about the customer and their ability to access the game once the company decides that it's time to close down. I do think there will be games that will have a harder time with this than others. Games like World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy XIV and those big online-only games would be a lot harder to get to work like this, I think. The Stop Killing Games website does say that for other MMORPGs, server emulators have emerged, which allow for players to still play the game. The same section does admit that for larger, more involved games, these may not be able to hold as many players as the official servers, but it would still be better than not being able to play the game at all. Now, the big counter argument against all these measures that I've seen is that it would be cost prohibitive. While I feel like this could be more of a case for preparing a backup for the large-scale online-only games, most early online multiplayer games used private servers or player hosting, so I doubt that this would be super expensive if planned properly for certain types of online games. I'm sure that implementing this would require a little bit more time and money to do, but I also think that if this was planned beforehand, it would probably be done for much less than trying to find a way to add it later on, right before servers were taken off. I think the main focus isn't on the adding of these features costing more, but that these features require a release of control and removal of a way to force people towards newer releases. This inability to force people to newer games is often, I think, where the main worry about money is. There's so much money in the development of these new games that if people don't move away from older games to these new releases, then there may not be as much money made in these. It just feels like this strategy is very short-sighted. People generally don't love feeling like things are taken away from them, especially if they've paid money for it. The whole argument as games as licenses may sound good in legal terms or as an out for doing things like this, but I think that the majority of people don't view the purchase of games that way. Companies leaning hard into this strategy are likely to alienate more more people due to this than lose sales due to making sure older games are still playable. That's why I think a movement like Stop Killing Games seems like a good one. So many games are delisted and unplayable because of the closure of servers. Having companies be required to try to keep that game playable after server closures is an important step in a future that is going to be primarily digital, and where even physical copies of games can become useless due to these practices. Maybe such a requirement would keep companies from adding unnecessary online components to games in the first place. No single player game or portion of a game needs always online. Not every game needs some sort of competitive multiplayer mode tacked onto it. There are also games like Mad Max where the unnecessary online components didn't make the game unplayable after closure, but did make getting all the achievements impossible. If companies were forced to think about their online portions of their games a bit more, I think that would be a win for gamers overall. While I would hope that any solutions put in place would be reasonable and not put too much on game developers, I don't feel like the path we're on with online games is a very good one. I think that we can have solutions that are much better than making a game unplayable and taking them down from the store. Why waste all that work by closing everything down when you could still make some money off the game by having it still be playable and accessible years later? I think that having more games be preserved is a good thing, and that's why I do think that Stop Killing Games seems like it is trying to move things in the right direction. That's just my thought on this issue though. So what about you? What do you think? Is there some element of the movement I missed or overlooked, or a good reason to not support it? Let me know in the comments, as I'd love to continue the discussion there. That's all for this video though, so I'll see you in the next one.